We should be live by now. Hello and welcome everybody for our next episode of the Devopsspeakeasy podcast. And in my virtual studio with me today, my usual and amazing co-host, Kat Cosgrove, developer advocate with JFrog. Hey, Kat. My name is Baruch Sadogurski. I'm head of DevOps advocacy in JFrog, and a very special and dear guest today, Leonid Igolnik, the man and the legend in certain circles, ex-SVP of engineering in Signal Effects and Splunk, ex-VP of engineering in CA Technologies, as director in Oracle, and in many other
whatever, a very small role as a glorified figurehead in couple well-known SaaS companies.
Yes, this and speaker, podcaster, blogger, and everything else. So speaking about that, he looks at his phone not because he's bored, but because he's waiting for a link for the YouTube podcast so he can share it with the world in general and his family
specifically
in particular.
My mother.
Specifically my mother, so we can. So we'll have at least one viewer. Okay, so I'm going to tweet it right now, and we are live.
All right, all right.
Okay, while I'm doing that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Leonid?
So I started like many folks in our industry as an engineer. I actually started coding when I was 12 because I was an introvert and still am. So this current situation actually was easy for a while. It's good for introverts. You know, the rest of the world has discovered how we like to live. But I am also a trained extrovert just because of the nature of the stuff I used to do professionally or am doing professionally. I was a software engineer for a while, did this in Israel, got started in delivering B2B software applications over the web in 97, so 23 years this May. So started doing SaaS before SaaS was coined as the term, then moved to Canada, did run the platform team for the second largest domain registrar in the world at the time, Tucows Open SRS. Those of you that are old enough probably remember Tucows as something where you used to download shareware, but a lot of them don't know that. A lot of folks don't know that, you know, we leveraged that network of download mirrors and had 6,000 resellers of our digital services. And then after that, I ended up by accident doing a consulting gig here in the Valley 15 years ago. And, you know, here I've been since then. It's the high taxes and the great weather that keeps us all here. Joined a startup as a head of engineering that was in the HR space. That startup was shortly after that acquired by a company called Taleo, and became the head of engineering for the mid-market business at Taleo. It was a great run for us. 2007 is when I started at Taleo, and we were still trying to convince the world this whole cloud thing and delivering software via the cloud is kind of a thing. We had a great run. There was a great article back in the day about the 4 horsemen of SaaS, and it was Salesforce, Concur, and 2 HR companies, SuccessFactors and Taleo. And like any other B2B market, inevitable things have happened. A buyer wanted a suite of products, and you know, we both SuccessFactors and us have built our own suites. And then a bigger company decided to join our suite was there. So SuccessFactors was acquired by SAP in, I think, November 2011, and we were acquired by Oracle in February of 2012. Spent a few years at Oracle and then moved on with a few of my Taleo friends and spent some time trying to turn CA, Computer Associates, CA Technologies, into a software company again. I've done a variety of interesting gigs there. Run engineering for the old Wiley product. That was a tremendous amount of fun and super geeky. I've done some security work, done some M&A related work. And then after taking a year off, I joined as a head of engineering of another company that was building monitoring tools, a company called Signal Effects. You know, the world of DevOps is changing. We can talk about kind of what drives the change, and therefore the tools have to evolve. So we were building a new generation of monitoring tools together with several other companies. And as I said, as it happens time and time again, a suite was interesting, and a bigger company decided to join a couple of pillars we had in our suite to theirs. And last August, we announced that the company was acquired by Splunk. And since the acquisition has closed and we've completed the integration, I am now taking a bit of a break. It's an interesting time to take a break and
for sure.
starting to think about what's next.
So that's a crazy long history in cloud and SaaS. So how tired are you of the cloud is just someone else's computer joke? Like
You
on
know
a
what?
scale from 1 to ready to roll over and die, how exhausted are you hearing that?
It's kind of interesting because I never took that joke maybe seriously. This is the first time somebody like I don't think I care, and fundamentally, as you said, it's way more than somebody else's computer,
Yeah.
right? It's I remember in 2007 working with the large fintech customer, trying to convince them that our security is going to be on par, if not better than yours, because our life depends on it as a business, right? There's this thing in SaaS called the reputational risk. So it's certainly, so there's the cloud, right? And there's the SaaS aspect of it. And there are so many layers now, right? Infrastructure as a service, software as a service, platform as a service. There's so many layers there. So maybe because I grew up in the space professionally, I never cared about as a joke, right? It wasn't funny or sad or even relevant.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Kat, you disappeared from the video entirely.
Hopefully it's not something I said. All right. So Baruch, where's my link? You know, I need to get I need to
check dimensions should be there.
From JFrog? No.
From Devopsspeakeasy.
Oh, there's a separate Twitter account.
There, it's a whole separate operation. It's it's definitely affiliated and sponsored by JFrog, but it's not necessarily JFrog thing.
Got it. So company was in a company like a real business. One second. And here it is. And let me retweet this, like this, and share this with the most important person who is.
Oh my God.
Due to her age, my parents have been sheltering in place, and they will appreciate the opportunity to get themselves entertained, listening to me talk about subjects they don't necessarily understand.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. I'm here in the same boat with you, and we have an important update from Kat that it's sunny in Seattle today.
It is.
So Kat, I have to respond in kind. How tired are you about hearing the jokes about the rain in Seattle?
I'm pretty patient with that because it doesn't actually rain here that much. I grew up in Memphis, and it rains considerably more there than it does here. It's just like overcast here more days a year. But I do appreciate that it's off-putting, the like long-standing rumor that it's like so rainy and dark and gray and miserable and shitty here. It keeps people from moving here as often. And like rent is really expensive here. I know it's worse in San Francisco, but it's getting pretty bad here. So I would like fewer people to
think that it's horrible. Yeah.
So you're happy to continue to proliferate the myth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's miserable. We never see the sun. It rains like 362 days a year. The beer is terrible. The coffee sucks. Nobody's nice. There's nothing to do. And it's just,
love it.
God, no cool bands don't tour here.
That's right. So there's there's nothing to do in Seattle. Moving on.
Yeah. Everybody should definitely move to San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely. Go stay in California. Please don't come here.
Yeah.
Too late for that. We've been having an exodus to places like Austin, Seattle, San Diego, Portland, you name it. Salt Lake City.
We need to reverse it and send people back to San Francisco.
Yeah, please go back there. But the increasing popularity of remote work, especially probably after this is over and more companies have realized that, hey, maybe maybe we can actually have more remote workers, makes it easier to live in lower cost areas, like
Memphis.
Memphis.
So-
Yeah.
s-
My rent at my last apartment in Memphis was $500 a month, and it was like
Yeah.
1,000 square foot, one bed, one bath with laundry in the unit and private parking across the street from my favorite bar, utilities included in that $500 a month.
It's interesting. I made the mistake of installing TikTok on my phone recently, and that's a mistake. So if you can avoid it, don't.
I mean, I'm a millennial,
I-
so
It's not about being a millennial. It's about starting in 5-minute increments and looking up from the phone and realizing that it's been an hour and a half, at least for me. But yes, through the current situation of a lot of people's sitting at home, you get an insight into other people's households on TikTok throughout the US, and it is kind of
yes.
interesting to see the kind of houses people tend to have in places where they do not cost like a mansion should.
Yeah, that's something that is very prominent on TikTok. You look at that and you look at the mentions and you're like, what the hell? But let's talk about another topic that was part of Kat's remark, and that's remote work. And
Yep.
since this is something that is with us for now and will probably stick around for a while after all this is done. And me personally, I think that a lot of great things will come out of this situation, and our adaptation for remote work and making the new normal is one of them. Let's talk about management in remote work, especially the right and wrong things to do, how different types of management can be adapted to remote, what to do and what not to do, how to check on people or not, all this stuff.
So I'm torn on remote work because if you listen to me in the past and you look at what I said, you'll know that I'm a strong believer in collocation, because I believe collocation is still the most efficient way to run the railroad, especially when it comes to development teams. Now, last 6 weeks of sitting at home, being not in the middle of a job, gave me an opportunity to ponder that question again. And I will continue to claim that remote work today is still going to continue to be less efficient in certain areas. And I'll highlight them, though. And what I'm wondering is, number one, will those areas be compensated by efficiency gains from others, like not having to commute, right? Like I in my last gig, the team moved to a site where my commute was 2 hours at best a day, right? And
Nope.
I could have used those 2 hours doing something else, and it went up from maybe 25 minutes each way, so an hour a day. I think and I've also spent a fair bit of time building HR tools, and one of the products I owned was a learning management system where you think about problems of onboarding. So I think there are two areas that we need to beef up, and I think companies will struggle with, because majority companies, at least in my experience, don't have those solved well. Number one is onboarding new employees or new engineers into the team, and having a formalized, easy to consume onboarding program, right? And having the right tools that support that onboarding program, that don't look like a traditional learning management system, right? Bite-sized chunk learning appropriate to the kind of the generational preferences of different generation of consuming content is one area. I think the second interesting area is and I think remote can work much better for people that are experienced, but people who are early in their career and for whom it is a first job, I wouldn't even know where to get them started as an engineer, because unfortunately, unlike the folks that come out of the coding boot camps, they don't come out of school, and neither did I when I left school, baked, ready to go and become a software engineer. They don't teach them software engineering as much still. So a lot of this learning, and it's not surprising. Baruch and I have a acquaintance in common who says software engineering is not an art, it's not a science, it's a trade, right? And
It is. It's important to note that I went to a boot camp. I don't have a CS degree. I
Yeah.
came out of a coding boot camp, and that was like one of the selling points for it that I could. I mean, I showed up to the boot camp with pre-existing like front end experience, but one of the selling points is that I came out of that ready to like actually write code.
Yeah.
You know,
And I do know, and I agree with you, because like tradesmen have figured out for millennia how to train their apprentices, right? And you train by observing, and what I think the struggle we're gonna have if people want to embrace work is, and that's an area that needs to be solved, and I don't know yet how to solve it right, is onboarding folks who are early in their career, because they're the ones who struggle the most. And that, I think, transition for me to thinking about like managers, especially first-time managers. It's much easier, and I taught a number of managers on my teams how to walk the shop floor, right, and how to watch for body language. And I know I walk the shop floor and I watch for body language to see if somebody is stuck on something and needs help, right? And that efficiency by recognizing the secondary indicators, because not everybody is comfortable raising their hand and
Sure.
saying, hey, I'm stuck on something, or are self-aware enough to know when to say, you know what, I've been stuck on this long enough. Let's get some help. And I think that's going to be a struggle for managers, right? Like having that discipline of proactively checking in with people more so that they would or need to if they just sit together in the same shared space. So like, here's the initial brain dump of thoughts. I think we can dig deeper into a variety of areas, because there's a conversation about the process, there's a conversation about tools, and there's conversation about skills. And I think those are different depending on the kind of company you are and the kind of like where you are in your career, both as a leader as well as the contributor to the team.
I think I mostly agree with you. Like I like remote work, and our team is almost completely distributed. So we're never in the same office. My office before this was an airplane or the Delta Sky Miles Lounge. But I don't think that fully remote is right for everybody. And engineering teams are, especially new engineers, that's a good example, because I know like when I started, I needed to be sitting next to one of my teammates because I needed my team lead to recognize when I was stuck. And I didn't want to ask for help because I was nervous and didn't want to look stupid and thought I for sure should have known how to figure this out. And he was a good manager because he recognized that quickly. But and that's as somebody who was already used to working remote. I worked remote before that, but Baruch checks in on me about once a week, and that's a good spot for me personally. But
now the thing is, I have no idea if once a week is too much, too little. If I ask the right questions when I do that, and I don't know how to get better in that, because obviously your feedback is imparted by the fact of our relationship, right? But I don't have any other. So those are the questions that I really don't know how to answer, and Leonid, with his experience, probably does.
Well, I don't think there's a magic answer, but I think both of you touched on something. I think it's important to have the conversation because it's also an individualized approach. Everybody is different. Everybody needs a different cadence, and I think for somebody who's responsible for leading a group of people to have a conversation with people that they're helping about what's the right cadence, or what should I be watching for the symptoms. And not everybody's going to be comfortable having this conversation, both as somebody who leads the team or somebody who's being asked this question. You have to be open and self-reflective to realize what are your symptoms of being stuck, and what should you tell the other party of, like, hey, listen, if you see me do this, I'm probably stuck, right? It requires some self-discipline, and like any other skill, like you learn it by doing, right? And I think I think it starts with the conversation and trying to find individualized approach, because I think one rule to rule them all is not going to work. It's not going to work with people.
for sure.
That's one of the parts I enjoy about my role as an org leader. I shamelessly stole this from one of my architects. I think, dealing with computers is different from dealing with humans. Humans are non-deterministic, variable feedback time machines. and the variation on that is much higher than dealing with even the most complex distributed systems, and that makes it kind of uniquely both challenging and stimulating if you can go and find the ways to kind of manipulate or like move those systems into a direction, but the approach is always individualized.
I think it's important to note for people listening that this is not a normal remote work environment, what we're in right now. This doesn't feel like what it felt like when I was working remotely like 3 or 4 years ago. It's everybody's productivity is down a little bit. So except for maybe me and Baruch, who it feels like we're both working like way more than we did when we could fly.
Yeah,
Well, exactly.
I think the real question is, do you have kids that you need to take care of most of the day, or you don't, right? So I think here among three of us, we are in the fortunate, whatever you want to call it, position that we don't have those interruptions. But we know people on our team as well who are not working but trying to work because of like the tremendous disruption that they have in their lives with their kids being home. Either it's single parents who actually need to kids require their attention, or there is like just 8 kids in the house, and I mean good luck working with that. So
and I think there's
the biggest difference. Yeah.
And you know what? It's not just kids. I think there's another extreme. Like, for example, in the Bay Area, for folks early in their career, roommates are very common. But typically, at least in my experience, folks don't have the living conditions that allow them to coexist with their roommates for the entire day during the day, right? Those were places where you go cook, shower, maybe watch some TV, but you didn't used to spend a lot of time in them, and those. So we haven't touched on that area. Like if you want to work from home, you have to have a work environment set up to be productive from home.
Yeah.
And it goes from like fundamentals, and some of the smarter companies in the Bay Area, when they were kind of switching to remote, told employees, like, if you don't have a monitor at home, take a monitor, right?
Yeah.
But
I know Google did that, letting people take like their whole ass desks if they wanted to.
Yeah. Well, the next question is, do I have a room and setup for that? And then I just run into the most peculiar situation where there's a household that I heard of where there are 2 friends that live. They both work. One works for Apple, one works for Facebook. And, well, neither of them can take any hardware to work to home because there are confidentiality reasons. So we now also are starting to run into situations of remote home in a shared living environment also creates all kinds of interesting problems for companies when it comes to confidentiality. Because you may be living or having a Zoom meeting right next to one of your direct competitors.
Yeah, that's true. That's not something I considered. How do you handle that? You just don't attend that meeting, or you wear headphones, but they could still look over and see the slide deck that's on your screen, or
it's something we have to go figure it out. And I think if a lot of people are forecasting that this nature of work, and people will love the fact that they don't have to go to the office, right? Will persist, and I think it will persist to a certain extent, because certain companies who were shy from trying this, or certain managers or leaders who were shy from trying this, will discover that it's actually workable, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it will work for all the situations. And if it does become more common, more permanent, I think we'll see the redistribution of population into lower density. Like, you don't have to live in San Francisco if you're working remote. You can be in Denver, 1 hour away, and in much more beneficial kind of cost of living situation, and possibly by yourself, i.e. without roommates, or in a place where you and roommates can share both living and working spaces without interfering with each other, right?
Yeah.
Or I think we will see. I actually think some people will clamor to go back to the office, right? Depending on your personal situation. A lot of humans are social creatures, and the social interaction is, like
it's really
everybody else, I'm sure. I've been having drinks with my friends over Zoom.
I've been doing that too, yeah.
I had drinks over Zoom with friends who I have in Europe, like in Serbia, in Croatia, in Poland, which normally under any normal circumstances I
do.
probably wouldn't even consider doing because we all would be busy with our lives. But it's not the same.
Yeah.
Not the same. Not the same.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Like what are you seeing and observing from the folks you have been talking to? Like what is the norm? Are we ready? Are we mature enough on tools and processes? Are humans like do people have the right living environments to do this in a sustainable way?
I think it really varies. Like some people I know are handling this way, way, way better than others. Even those who are like very used to remote work are finding this more like emotionally stressful because there's a lot of like doom and gloom and the news is terrifying. So it's more emotionally stressful than usual. But I think the end result will be that there are more people working remote because some people are just way happier like this. I personally am not a fan of going into offices on a regular basis. I am less productive there because people always want to chit chat with me and I find it distracting. And I have a couple of coworkers who don't respect the like headphones rule. And it throws off my groove entirely. But as an industry, no, I think we've still got some work to do before it's wholly efficient to work from home.
So what are the tools we're missing? This is one of the things I've been pondering about because I'll tell you, if this happened in 2008, we would have been wholly screwed because like the things like high-speed internet, Slack,
Oh, for sure. That
and
would have been
Zoom,
a
like
shit show.
How about 1998?
Yeah.
What would we do? I mean, we would
No,
sit in front of the TV for 20 hours a day out of work.
yes.
Because
I think we would be less stressed because in 1998 the world was less connected than it is in 2008 and it is today, right? So there's this personal social media aspect. But like for example, let's talk about tools. Like people have tried time and time again, and nobody has properly solved their distributed whiteboard problem to this day, right? And software engineers and whiteboards, they go hand in hand. I've been to so many companies or I've joined companies where I was like, wait, we don't have a whiteboard? It's like everywhere and on the shop floor and in every nook and cranny. So like I still haven't seen a good solution, although I've seen some very expensive solutions that integrate with Zoom around like distributed whiteboarding and TVs.
Yeah,
but you're not going to put the Zoom ones work quite well, but you're not going to put one in every individual's home, right?
No. Yeah, no way. Like I mean, I was an engineer before I was a developer advocate on the IoT team.
you're still an engineer.
I'm still an engineer, but now I'm part of the marketing org. So
No, it doesn't count. Still an
the
engineer.
marketing team doesn't want me to admit that I'm still an engineer. I'm marketing now.
I don't want you to admit that you're marketing. You're still an engineer.
It's true. It goes both ways. But around the desks for the IoT team and the Seattle office here, we've got like 8 whiteboards. Like we can't get enough of them.
Yep.
And we use them constantly. But at home, I have to use, if I want to use a whiteboard, I have to use like my living room windows.
Well, you remember how last week we interviewed Sam Boyer, and that was a fascinating interview.
Yeah.
And one of the things he has, and it's a part of his setup, it's not accidentally, that on his background, it is actually a whiteboard that he can draw on it, and then the camera shows what's there, and it worked really well.
It worked really, really well. Yeah.
But that's to me, in my experience, that's an exception to the rule because trying to point even a 1080p camera at the whiteboard is just a disaster because of lighting, because of angles, because of resolution. So it may work in some cases, but like, is this a scalable solution for sustainable remote work?
That's a good question.
I can't say for sure that it is. It just feels like it's not there yet. And his solution relied on the ability to have like a physical whiteboard behind his camera.
Yep.
And I have nowhere in my apartment I could do that.
Yeah.
No.
So I know a bunch of my friends were playing with this product. I don't know if you guys have heard of it or used it, called Miro, like Miro boards.
I've used it. Yeah.
So we actually used it for distributed planning at SignalFX when we were doing planning across multiple engineering sites. But yeah, so that's one area. What other tools are we still struggling with?
Yeah, so
it fills in a bunch of holes.
conferencing, like in events and conferences that now we are trying to replace the offline conferences and face-to-face with something online. And this is something that obviously we're all very opinionated about, because all of us are speakers, and all three of us have opinions on how to do it or how not to do it. So our friends from the Jagru group, the folks who organize a bunch of conferences that we all like and spoke at and will spoke in the future, including Devopps, that I think all three of us are speaking there. They try to solve this problem of how not to make an online conference just an endless stream of webinars.
Yep. We do need a solution for that, because people tune out during webinars all day. If there's not some kind of like interactive element to it, it starts to feel it does just feel like you're watching a series of webinars every day, and you're going to get bored and you're going to tune out eventually. And how do you make that more engaging? How do you emulate the hallway track?
Well, especially since most webinars are not engaging to begin with, and they already have a bad rep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I know folks are thinking about it, but like conferences are interesting, to three of us, because we are kind of, this is inside baseball type of conversation. I'm more curious about your thoughts on other tools that the industry needs if we want to be successful in this remote work. And I, due to the nature of my role, tend to spend a lot of my time at the office with people. And then, the rest of that time is still sliced in half an hour to 1 hour increments on in meetings, video conferences, and other conversations. But for somebody who does do the remote work, either because you travel or either because you're finding yourself in the situation, I'm curious, like Baro, Kat, what other tools are you lacking today? Maybe I'm looking for an idea for a next startup. Who knows?
Yeah. So me personally, despite everything that's going on with Zoom, I'm still relatively big fan of Zoom because it does two things very well. It deals well with bad internet, providing reasonable quality of audio and or video, or when you turn off the video, then the audio remains in sustainable quality, and providing a good quality, not great, but good quality of audio and video over a good internet connection. And I think those two, and it does it without spinning your CPU to 150%.
I think there's a third or fourth, whatever the count is, important feature on Zoom for people who all of a sudden have to go invite their coworkers into their living spaces.
The virtual backgrounds.
Yes, Zoom's capabilities around virtual backgrounds without having concrete green screen, like a real green screens, are rather amazing. And I think there was a lot of interesting write-ups about this in remote learning environments for kids from different socioeconomic backgrounds, and how at school, right, the virtual background is a great equalizer.
Yes.
But I think even for this in-home environment, you either embrace it, and kind of some people embrace it, right? The kids, the dogs, or some people find it incredibly comforting that you don't have to go deal with the messiness behind you, right? And you just throw up a virtual background.
Oh, yes. I love not having to stress about how messy my living room is right behind me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, and frankly, all this pile up on Zoom, I think a lot of it is completely uncalled for. What they call security flows are mostly about people not using the software correctly. I mean, yes, the software it's in the provider of software, the software vendor is in charge of making your software as intuitive as possible to use it the right way. But in the end of the day, if you call for people to join your meeting and you publish how to do it, people will join your meeting, all kind of people. And this is not something that, up to a vendor to actually solve.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
don't
Kat.
think it's fair to like shit on them over the like not password protecting your Zoom meetings thing. Like if you're publishing the meeting ID publicly, like you said, like what do you expect? I do think that they make some decisions about the way their software behaves that is incredibly shady at best, like asking for elevated access to
Yes.
reboot the audio stack.
Yes.
We don't know whether or not that stores your admin password.
Absolutely.
And it is a prompt that they specifically designed to look like a system message when it's not. And
Yes.
that's fucked up.
Absolutely. I agree. There are a lot of fuck ups, but most of the what people are screaming about is actually
User
yes.
error.
So I have a different perspective on this, and I think that's the nature of being in the middle of public eye and being widely used.
Yes.
I think Zoom historically has won because they favored usability over everything else, right? The famous story was the virtual local host server that was running so the meeting could start automatically when you click on the link.
Yeah.
Is a great example of that. So they favored that. And to me, this is like a story of cars and seat belts. For a while, we didn't care that cars didn't have seat belts or airbags because they were not costing us a lot of money as the society and not killing people in droves. And then at some point, we reached that threshold and we started caring and we criticized, or if anything, we made it mandatory for the manufacturers or for the purveyors of those types of capabilities to do certain things on behalf of the end user. And I think Zoom is just finding itself in that same situation. So I don't think the criticism is unfair.
But
at
they're
least
not
most
evil. They're not malicious.
they're not evil. They may be negligent at
Yes.
scale,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But to their credit, and I think I have had to scale businesses the way, like when the wave hit unexpectedly. To their credit, I think they managed to scale the business, stay up, and also be very responsive to this feedback that they were getting from the community at large. And quite frankly, I think they acted on most of it, if not all of it, so far.
Yeah, I think
And
their response has been commendable, I think.
yeah. And I think the lessons learned from, and I don't remember the numbers. Like I think they went from something like 10 million Mao DAO to like 200. Like that type of scale, while
It's
trying
nuts.
to deal with something else, I think is highly commendable.
Yeah.
And it will leave him a better vendor for that, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
for sure,
got to
for
be
sure.
a stressful position to be in, to just like all of a sudden have to scale that far that rapidly.
Yep.
That alone
And
has to
being
be
in the
incredibly
public eye and having all this criticism, either deserved or not deserved, but you cannot
Yeah.
blame the victim. You cannot go ahead and say, "No, you're stupid. You're using it wrong." Instead, they actually need to fix it, although it wasn't their fault in the first place. Of course, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some companies can say, "Don't hold it like that," but probably not every company.
Yeah.
Piling shit on companies that help us doing
Are we done
remote
with
work.
like things that we're lacking for this to be sustainable? I'm just curious if you guys have other things that like bug you.
Yeah, that's what I wanted
Oh.
to say. Let's talk about Slack and their effort of being the tool for remote work, while they are notoriously refusing being a remote company. Well, they come to their own R&D and their own organization. They
Yeah,
never
that's so
hired
weird.
remote. They never hired remote. They opposed it. But now you see stuff like, let us teach you how to work, how to be productive remotely with Slack.
Yeah, that's really weird. Like I don't know how they got they got jumped on Twitter over that. And I don't know how they expected anything less.
I think it stems from the usual disconnect between the marketing side of the house
Yeah.
and the engineering side of the house, and the philosophies are different. They sell different things that they practice, and quite frankly, I don't know if it's a situation of awareness of what's going on within the company on the marketing side of the house, because of course, if I was a marketer, I would be like, I don't know, I haven't been following JFrog, shame on me, but was there not article about CI/CD pipelines in a work from home environment? Did the marketing put something like that out?
Yeah, we thought about how can we promote our tools using this situation, and mention how setting up Artifactory helps to work remotely. I hope it never get anywhere because it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I've been asked.
Well, I would
Yeah.
argue that, like, and we can talk about this. I think like reliable CI/CD pipeline is incredibly important, where you cannot get a hold of an individual by tapping them on
Absolutely.
the shoulder after they broke the build, right? And I think, and Baruch knows that I've been a fan of the company for a long time. I think artifact management is an incredibly important part of that chain. But for Slack, to me, it stems from the usual disconnect from marketing and the other side of the house, right? And that not being caught. And as I said, I am a big believer in collocated engineering teams, not just engineering teams. I'm a big believer in collocating engineering teams with people that write documentation, that create the UX, that do product management to the extent that possible. I still find it more efficient and absolute. Is it more efficient in its totality after you add up the commute time and all those other things? That's a great conversation. But it is not surprising to me that Slack does that. And I don't know if they have this, Silicon Valley elitism, if you will, of the best engineers live in those 7 square miles of some of the most expensive real estate in the world. Because I've seen a lot of startups who I advise or consulted or was asked to help, and we talked about distributed site strategies and maybe building another site outside of the Bay Area, whether it's in places like Austin, Boston, somewhere on the other side of the pond, and there is this elitism. And I've been privileged enough to live and work professionally in several different countries and several different environments. And yes, Silicon Valley has not been reproduced anywhere else, right? We are the Hollywood of the software industry.
Fair.
And yes, they make movies outside of Hollywood, but we have the concentration of talent, i.e. the trades. We have the concentration of money, and we have the concentration, and we have a different culture. I think the biggest advantage Valley has is a culture is its openness and willingness to talk about things without worrying that just a conversation will create some kind of disadvantage. So I don't know if that's where Slack falls, and that's where they behave. But there's certainly a clear disconnect between what happens on the dev side and the marketing side.
Yeah, maybe that's why we have our DevRel team in the marketing org, so that we, the engineers, can tell marketing, hey, maybe don't
Yeah.
do that.
Don't publish that.
I've spent enough time telling them which email subject line is the most appealing to engineers.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
and they ask, right? So this
They
is good.
ask. They
Yeah.
ask, which is important. Like that's part of my job, is answering that question. And they have the foresight to ask the person whose job it is, rather than just yeeting some weird
Yeah.
thing about CI/CD into the void.
Yeah, well, and by the way, to be fair to Slack, right? Well, Twitter is an echo chamber. Silicon Valley and the
It
tech
is.
community is an echo chamber, and I have to wonder if that particular marketing message was targeted to people who are so far from even thinking about Slack, right? Because we do
Maybe.
know that there's a long tail on that maturity curve on either working remotely or even the long tail on on software that has still been written. Great example of New York State looking for COBOL engineers to fix the unemployment system because it's not coping. So perhaps that message was effective outside of the community, and they got flagged from a community.
Yeah.
I think the company will ultimately survive. There are no better alternatives.
Oh,
and
for sure. I don't think they're going to be toppled anytime soon.
there are no
Like-
better alternatives, and it's interesting. When Slack showed up, I looked at it and I'm like, well, so this is a new version of glorified MIRC client for
it's
my-
Merck.
It's Merck
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
You know where it can bite them? It can bite them in hiring, because in the end of the day, especially because they don't have the remote work culture, they will hire from this very small pool of people who actually were active on this Twitter campaign of shaming them that they don't do what they preach, and this is where it can harm.
It could. Let me counter you though. Giving everything else going in the valley, the hiring market just shifted from being owned by the employee to be owned by the employer, because at the end of the day, you have to pay rent and eat. So I think for the next year or so, more stable companies will be much more attractive to certain type of engineers. People on work visas, people who are still who may become risk averse as a result of this current economic situation. And by the time the market recovers, I think people will forget.
And that was a perfect segue to talk about the HR market, because I think this is fascinating. For the last couple of years, we got used to and kind of worked hard to survive in the employee market. One of the side effects was, I think, the move towards inclusivity and diversity, because except of the fact that that's the right thing to do, it also helped the employers to widen the pool from which they can draw resources. Now we suddenly back to the scenario when the employers can actually pick and choose, and they don't need to put more efforts in finding more people because there are a lot of people to choose. And I wonder if that won't harm our inclusivity and diversity efforts.
I think it may or may not. I would argue that in some places the momentum and the velocity is enough, right? Where if you have more candidate to go pick and choose from, and I'll give you a counterpoint. And I had conversations like that with my own teams that would encourage me and were asking me about our own diversity efforts at places where I run teams. And I would tell you, listen, our choice as a startup trying to survive is, if I have an engineer today, to keep looking for an engineer that will further diversify the team. And we were pretty fortunate at SignalFX. We had fairly diverse set of folks, both gender and ethnicity, and kind of all kinds of representation, both in leadership and engineering roles and product roles. But for a startup who's trying to survive, right, your choice is you hire now or you wait. So quite frankly, I think if the candidate or if the talent pool is increasing, right, or if it's easier to find candidates, it may be easier to find diverse candidates. So I think for some companies, the momentum is there. And I think there's a second dimension not to be lost. There is it's a big shift in enterprise software buying patterns that I've seen. And it's the shift of folks or the generation that grew up with those values coming to power, right? Becoming leaders in organizations. It's the conversation that there is a reason there's a great effort in usability of enterprise software, because the generation that grew up with the digital phone in their hand and the usability of the mobile operating systems is going to refuse to buy enterprise tools that look like they looked 15 years ago, right? So I think it may balance out with the fact that folks that grew up with those values are now coming to places where they're also decision makers. And interestingly enough, I think in the time like this, at least in my experience, you see what I would call more field promotions, right? Where people may be giving roles ahead of being ready because the company would rather promote somebody from inside to retain them and grow them instead of bringing somebody from outside. And therefore, you may see more of those leaders coming into those decision-making roles.
Kat, what do you think about that? About the inclusion and diversity in times of COVID-19, if you wish.
Talking about diversity and inclusion on a panel with two white dudes in the tech industry.
So now
privileged,
now
two white privileged dudes. Let's just
That's true. That's true.
dig it. Let's dig our own ditch deeper here.
Well, I don't know about you. I was a refugee when I escaped the Soviet Union, if that counts for anything.
It does. It does. You know, I turned 18 in 2008. So I turned 18, I graduated from high school, and the market immediately crashed. So I am unfortunately, and most of my peers are, unfortunately, like very, very used to this kind of like feeling of economic uncertainty, like being.
Yours is the most screwed generation, I have to say, because it's graduated right around the time, or it started coming into the workforce right around the time when we were dealing with economic uncertainty. And now your generation is of age where it's time to get settled, kids, houses, whatever. And now we're hitting this wave again. Like we were just having this conversation amongst friends. I think people of that age bracket, yes, we were slightly older when our first recession hit, right? But we were like mid-20s.
You mean the 2000, the
.com? .com?
Yeah. We were in our mid-20s by then.
Past 20s,
yeah, because that happened in like 1998, 2000, something like that.
No, end of 2000. End of 2000. Like I joined Taleo in March of 2000, and by December things melted.
Yeah, no, but I feel you, because my first job after university and the army that I was starting to look was exactly in the end of 2000. So I was thinking about Jane Torres and like kind of weird positions that I looked at. Yeah. So sorry about that. You were saying about that uncertainty and.
Yeah, so my generation is used to it because we've dealt with this our entire lives, our entire adult lives at least. So it's just, I don't know, somehow it feels right that as soon as we started to get our legs underneath us, we're now in our late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, we got our shit together, and then it all falls apart again. I don't know, that's some like bizarre cosmic justice there, but I don't know that it will necessarily have an impact on hiring where diversity and inclusion is concerned, just because we're now so loud about diversity and inclusion being an issue in the tech industry that I don't think anybody could get away with just hiring a team full of 30-year-old white dudes again. I don't think you could get away with it. We're too aggressive about it. We're too loud, and we're not going to tolerate that anymore. So I don't really think it'll be a problem. I think hiring in general will be a problem for like a hot minute. A few companies have ramped up their hiring, but a pretty considerable number of them have hiring freezes right now. But I don't think that's...
Yeah, no, that's the other way around. It's like getting a job will be harder. Hiring is going to be very easy now.
I think.
Finding talent is going to be easy. Getting a job is going to be hard. But,
it's going to be hard, but like I don't think anybody in our industry is going to suffer like proportionally as much as the rest of the professional world, just given that we entered this period of was a great shortage of professionals, like in millions worldwide. So we may be looking at redistribution and maybe readjustment of what we are able to command as professionals in terms of compensation. But like I think all of us as an industry are lucky to be at the right place at the right time.
I agree. Yeah, we're in a good spot industry wide, but these kinds of economic disasters do tend to like disproportionately affect poor people, people of color, any other demographic that's like historically been marginalized. I just don't know enough about it to say whether or not like this is going to hurt diversity hiring initiatives. I don't have enough facts to make an informed opinion on that, which I think is something that more people should be okay with saying. You should be able to say, I don't know enough about this to have an informed opinion, so I'm just not gonna say, be okay admitting when you don't know stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't have any answers on that as well. I just wonder if the activation in energy that we put into this, because it was our economic interest to enlarge the pool from which we fish the talent, was enough to keep this train going when we don't need this economic incentive anymore. That was my question. I don't have answer.
The interesting thought here, you said activation energy, Baruch. Well, if you think this will behave like an activation energy, this became a self-sustaining chemical reaction for those that are into chemistry and know what activation energy means. So I have to wonder if there was enough activation energy put into it for this to become a self-sustaining reaction.
Yeah, that's exactly was my question. I don't have an answer, obviously.
Well, time will tell.
Yes, but I exist in an echo chamber of people who are also very, very loud about diversity and inclusion in tech. So maybe I only feel that way because those are the people I talk to, and nobody is. If anything, people are louder about it right now. So.
Yeah, well, hopefully that it is this chemical reaction which is here to stay. I think we all agree that it would be a good thing.
It would be.
Yeah. What else we didn't talk to about and wanted to talk about today?
Well, the earnings are coming.
Earnings are coming.
Earnings
Yeah.
call.
The earnings are coming, and I am.
It's Q1 though. It's not the horrific Q2 that only.
Well, March is squarely Q1, and some companies, a lot of high tech companies, move their sales year, right, and it actually starts February 1st now, because people learn that closing deals. Well, it's done for two simple reasons. Number one, closing deals on December 31st sucks.
Yeah.
No, it just sucks. I had to approve legal red lines on vacation somewhere like in Guatemala with like barely working internet connection in the past. So it just sucks, right?
No, that's not fair to anybody.
So a lot of software companies move their fiscal years to January 1st. So some of them will be more affected by this, but I'm still bullish on places like Microsoft Google Cloud, like Azure Google Cloud, and Amazon. I think the money is cheap, way cheaper than I've ever remember it being to borrow.
Yeah.
And I think the bigger companies will continue to benefit from this. And I think, one of the best memes I've seen on the internet recently is what was the root cause of your digital transformation? CIO, CTO, customers, COVID-19. I think this economic recession, and we saw that in 2008 to a certain extent, will be another great transformational time for software to continue to move towards the cloud.
Yeah, for sure, it has forced a lot of companies to adapt very rapidly. What's the Bear Grylls thing? Adapt, overcome. What's the other one? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Nobody watches Bear Grylls. That's okay. That's okay. You should watch it though.
Yeah. Okay, boomers. We were being told by Kat. Okay, boomers. We acknowledge it and move on.
Yeah. Sorry about that, boomers.
Yeah. I mean, we will.
This is a perfect segue after the conversation about inclusion and diversity.
Exactly. And
by the way, Kat, just for your records, as I found out on one of my birthdays, Baruch and I both in protected class.
Yes.
Are
seems
you?
like-
Oh, because you're old enough to be victim
That-
to age discrimination, right?
Yes,
Exactly.
yes,
Yeah.
and apparently the threshold is not that old, as I found out. It was
How
one
old
of my
is it?
birthday.
40.
40.
40?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm so excited to get to join AARP. I want discounts on coffee at
No,
McDonald's.
no. Nobody talks about AARP, but we're a protected class, and thus you cannot discriminate against us by age. Just so we're clear. That's
Okay.
I found out by through a birthday card that I got from one of my friends who's a few months ahead of me. So
Mm.
that's how you learn those things. Apparently, it's
So
an
he
initiation.
congratulated you for joining the protected class.
Pretty much, that was the
Nice.
birthday card.
Nice.
How does it feel?
Yeah, saying that, I don't think we are very upset about our age and place in the world, Leonid.
No, it feels like being a teenager with a wallet of a 40-plus-year-old. So I think feels great.
Yeah. No complaints. No complaints on age. Definitely not. We do miss a lot of references on the latest memes, those.
Yes. Well, I think we missed the meme references for two reasons. There's I've spent 20 years in North America and I'm still catching up. So there's the
Oh yeah.
the memes you grew up with, and there is the memes that are generational.
Sure.
Yeah. So
that's-
funny enough, you know where you feel it the most when you watch the trivia TV shows like the Millionaire, you want to become a millionaire and stuff, because the first few questions are about the things that
pop
you grew
culture.
up with, right?
Yeah.
And I was that was always an issue for me. The first few questions, both in the original version, and also in the Israeli version. With Russian version, it's the other way around. I nailed the couple of you that you grew up with, and then they go into like the current state of things, which I'm really off, and this is where I felt. So trivia challenges are really hard for immigrants in general, and immigrants twice or three times as Leonid in particular.
Well, if you need like a monthly overview of current memes and youth slang, old man Baruch, I can put together a monthly presentation for you and be the, I don't know, millennial advisor to the DevRel
Oh,
org.
nice.
Since-
That's I
should
gotta
do
keep
that.
those memes fresh. By the way, this could be like a business. This could be a consulting service to a bunch of organizations.
I think it's at least can be a podcast with like a free part and then Patreon protected advanced things. In the free, we'll talk something that you can Google in like 5 minutes. And
Okay.
on the advanced, the protected thing, it will be like the post irony and the recursive memes that you really need to have a lot of background to understand.
Let's just say the
Okay.
frequency with which I have to use the Urban Dictionary has been increasing over the years.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
I mean,
Yeah.
our slang does get like weirder and weirder. It took me, I don't know, a good month to get Casey, Omara, he's in the BizDev org in the Seattle office for JFrog here. It took me a good month to get him to understand correct usage of the word yeet.
Do enlighten.
Do you understand yeet or no?
No, I don't
No.
think we
you see, the generational divide in slang exists by design to separate the generations and to give a common vernacular to each of the generations. So they, it's like Facebook versus Snapchat for parents and kids.
Sure.
So it's a natural phenomenon. But please enlighten us.
So yeet is literally, it means like to hurl with wild abandon. Like, are you familiar with people like wadding up a piece of paper and throwing it into the trash can and going Kobe or whatever? So imagine if instead of like trying to like delicately throw it into the trash can, you just like wind up and hurl it out into space. That's a yeet.
I don't know. For my generation, hurling is associated with a completely
With
different
puking.
activity.
With
Yes.
puking, yes.
Yes.
But yeah, if you like just wind up and throw something real hard, that's a yeet. But it's the
Interesting.
usage where it's weird. Like if you're about to do something stupid, or like you just go, you know what, screw it, YOLO. That's also an appropriate time to say yeet. Yeet
Interesting.
is to do anything with wild abandon, to just go for it.
Most recent term I had to look up on Urban Dictionary. Let's test Baruch. Let's see if he knows. Baruch, do you know
So
what
wait a
till?
second. First of all, wait a second. Marketing first. So that was a promotion of our future coming podcast about how to understand millennials for boomers. And stay tuned for more for future episodes. Yep.
We're at quits,
Maybe. Yeah, techno lingo. But yeah, Baruch, let's see if you can. So the most recent one, you have kids, so you may be closer to that than I am. What about the TIL? That one required a trip to an Urban Dictionary for me.
TIL.
Yes.
It might ring a bell, but I'm not sure I can refer to it now.
So Kat is smiling. I can see that. So she clearly knows. It stands for
It's-
that is lit.
Oh, no.
See?
Didn't know that.
Had to go look it up.
All right.
It more commonly means today I learned.
That too.
Yeah, no, that we know. Yeah. Today I learn, we know. Yeah.
I
And so-
didn't. By the way, I didn't know that meaning up until recently as well.
No, but
Yeah,
that's like a Twitter prefix.
I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now you go to when you discovered something, then you go to your Twitter and write TIL, and then what you actually learned, hoping it's as surprising to everybody else as it was for you.
Yeah, I think that started on Reddit actually, because there's a subreddit called Today I Learned that's been like a default front page subreddit for like an eternity, for like
Interesting.
7 years or something. So it probably started on Reddit.
Today we learned
Yeah.
that TIL was born on Reddit.
Hey, listen, I'm not ashamed to admit that I've recently learned that most screwdrivers are designed to work with a wrench.
Pardon?
Most handles of screwdrivers have those ridges on them that fit a wrench perfectly, so you can apply more torque.
Fuck, are you serious?
You see, it's a mind. Yes.
Today I learned. I mean, when I'm
Yes.
done with this podcast, I'm gonna go get a wrench and a screwdriver out of my junk drawer and test that. But that's
So
wow, that makes sense.
I'm
though.
thinking about my screwdrivers. Some of them are clearly designed for that. Others are not.
not. But like, yeah.
It's a thing, huh?
Whether a meme or not, here we learned. So perhaps the way to wrap this up, and I don't know how we're doing on time, is this unique situation that we have today is a good opportunity to learn new skills and to learn about how to work effectively differently, because whether we go back to normal or whether we go back to something that looks between what it used to be and something in the new, any of those skills that any of us who are working from home will pick up would be useful, because you never know when they're going to come in handy.
It's true. I want to learn Rust. I'm going to use some of this time to learn Rust.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a good opportunity to learn all kind of things. That's for sure.
I've been geeking out on my previous professional sabbatical. I was geeking out with machine learning and trained 5 different neural nets to play Snake.
That's fun.
Using different techniques. This time around, so far, I've geeked out on Kubernetes and sidecars. I was intrigued by the
realized
sidecar.
that you don't want to touch it ever again in your life.
No, I realized that as an old boomer, I remember when I had to wait for a server to be rack and stacked if I need capacity. And now with several command lines, I can spin up a cluster of hundreds, deploy things to them, and then apply cross-cutting concern at the networking level with a sidecar, which is my primary goal for the exploration. I wanted to learn more about sidecars. That was rather interesting.
There you go. And I think with this message of keep learning, and now you also have time for that. Well, at least some of us.
Hey, it goes back to the founder of the Soviet Union, right? The Russian Republic. Vladimir Lenin. Vladimir Lenin's slogan was "Learn, learn, learn." Exactly.
So with that, was bringing Lenin into our conversation, because that was kind of, expected from us, I guess. I want to thank our guest for today, Leonid. Thank you very much for coming. We just started to explore all kinds of fun topics with you, so that's definitely not the last time. Kat, thank you very much for co-hosting it with me. And my name is Baruch. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for the future episodes of the Devopsspeakeasy podcast and see you soon. Bye-bye.